Kurt, another week, another PBT Extra. How you doing? How was your weekend?
Good. I'm doing good. I'm doing well. It's just basketball playoffs. Next weekend I'm going out and we'll talk about I'll send you some pictures. Going out to see a band out at a funky place out in the California desert. But
sounds like Coachella.
It's out that direction. It's a small city. It's a place called Poppy and Harriet's. It's a small kind of outdoor venue, and we're going to go see a band called Mariachi El Bronx, which is
wow.
The Bronx is a hardcore punk band that has a mariachi project on the side, and they play legit, like straight up mariachi music. So
I love Vicente Fernandez. I don't know if you, I love like that type of music, Mexican music, mariachi, but Vicente Fernandez is like unbelievable. I had no idea like his command of like a song and just the drama. Every time I hear his music, I understand the idea like a troubadour,
Yeah.
Like George Strait and Fernandez. I'm like, I get it.
Great mariachi music is actually really fun, really impressive. This is borders on cultural appropriation, but it's done in the right spirit, so it's kind of fun. What have you been up to? What have you been doing?
I went to Broadway. I went to go see some shows the past week, and it was cool. For me, I just like seeing theater because we may have talked about this. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm going to repeat my take on theater. I think it's the highest as far as performing is concerned, performing arts, and I lump sports into the performing arts. I think theater is the best because for me, theater is all about electricity. And I'm telling you, it doesn't matter how many shows I go to. I go like whenever I travel around the world, I always go see theater. It doesn't matter where I go. That's like the number one thing I do is like I book a show at the theater and then book the flight. But it's just like at Broadway, it's different. It just hits different every time. Because as soon as the floodlights go up, like as soon as the curtain goes up and the lights go on the stage, it's the electricity is unmatched. It's better than Madison Square Garden. It's better than Ohio State college football. It's better than Duke, Cameron. It's better than the U.S. Open. It's better than anything I've ever seen. It's like better than the Masters. It's just something about theater, man, that is just like the highest of the highest. So I love it.
First off, I'm not going to tell your Notre Dame friends you mentioned Ohio State for their electric atmosphere. Well,
because I was there watching Notre Dame. I was at Ohio State.
It is one of those places I do want to go see a game someday. I was going to ask, did you see any of the? Because I know the Tony Award nominations came out, but like I didn't see any Tony. Just like, what do we want to go see when it comes out here? Because we're not in.
Yeah, I didn't see any Tony nominated plays, unfortunately, but there's still time. There's still time, Kurt. Yeah, but I think also with like the theater doesn't lie. And that's what I really love about theater. Because, people like football guys will say that and basketball guys will say that, like, the tape doesn't lie. But like in theater, you can kind of fake it in movies. You can kind of fake it in TV. Because, even movies, the whole concept, Kurt, of like a movie star doesn't mean you're a great actor. It just means that you can sell. It doesn't matter the quality of the movie. If you Google movie star definition, it means that you're bankable. That regardless of the quality of the movie, it will be successful at the box office. That doesn't have anything to do. It does not correlate with talent. In theater, like you can't hide. You can't lie. If you can't act, it's very clear you can't act. So I love it. I think it's like the best of the best of the best.
So the theater of Madison Square Garden is going right now. I figured that was the hot place to be in New York if you're not at the Met Gala.
Yeah, right now I can't even get into it. So let's just dive right in. I think with the playoffs round 2, I'm just curious, what are your initial thoughts?
These are fun series. These are good series, and much like the first round, Corey, they're just not breaking the way. They're not following the chalk. They're not breaking the way we expected. We've got upsets starting in Madison Square Garden, where without Jimmy Butler, Miami Heat. I mean, game 1 they get the win with Jimmy Butler being Jimmy Butler, but
no Julius Randle. That's
no
important.
Julius Randle. So I mean, it was, and he came back and had 25, and in the next game, even if he wasn't, it wasn't peak Julius Randle. He had a big impact, but Miami just finds ways to win. They defend well. They don't make mistakes. They hit their shots. Other guys step up. They're just so well coached, so well prepared, so unlike the first round. they weren't fazed by the impact of Madison Square Garden. There was Cleveland. Didn't it feel like the Cavs went into Madison Square Garden and went, whoa, this is real. This is the playoffs. And that Miami's like, yeah, been there, done that. Like, we're, as an organization, as players, we are not going to be taken back by the moment, and played brilliantly.
Yeah, I'm confused. One, I think, that's inexcusable if you're the Knicks. Like, how do you how do you keep it close in game 2? You have your star back, and it's like a close game, and Jimmy Butler's on the bench. And like, we went through this like a million times. There's like, who is on the Heat that's healthy, And it's like, so it's for me to think that the depth of the Heat, which I haven't seen all season long, is now coming out in a huge way. And like, and this is my whole issue with New York. And I mean, how do you not handle business, like more decisively? And like, a win is a win. I get that. Congratulations, New York. But like, to me, I'm looking, down the road. I'm thinking, okay, do you have a real shot to go against the 76ers or the Celtics? Like, if you want to win and go to the finals, you can't do that consistently in the playoffs.
No, they've now going to go into it's not the most hostile of environments, but it's not easy to go beat the Heat in Miami. They're comfortable. It's not one of those places that, it gets loud, but it's not Madison Square Garden or Golden One Center or the Chase gets loud. The old Oracle in the Bay Area was the loudest arena I've ever been in. It's standing on a runway next to a jet taking off loud. It was just crazy. Miami's not quite like that, but the Heat play well there. They're comfortable. Their role players are comfortable. And that's been, like you mentioned, their depth. The thing is, it wasn't there during the regular season, Corey. Like,
it wasn't.
Max hit shots, and Gabe Vincent had a nice season, but like, Duncan Robinson couldn't do anything. Like, all these guys who are stepping up now and making plays. Haywood Highsmith wasn't even in the rotation, and he's like, they're just getting quality minutes from everybody up and down the roster, and they didn't over the first 82. That's the part I didn't see coming.
Yeah, but this is the issue, I think, with just like the theater does not lie. You cannot hide. In the playoffs, you can't hide. If you're going to be out there in a 7-game series over and over and over and over and over again to get to win a championship, basically there's nothing to hide. There's no tricks. They know everything that you're going to throw at them. And eventually, you're going to have to just outplay somebody. And what we call in football, just like hand in the dirt, like you're just gonna have to just outman somebody, just play real football in that sense. So I think in that's why I've been so surprised to see that Miami has so many tricks up their sleeves, because I thought I knew this team, because 80-something games is a lot of games. Yeah. And they're just surprising me. And I just don't know how many more times I can be surprised, especially with Jimmy Butler on the bench, for however long, or especially how, with Tyler Hero and Oladipo, like everyone on the bench. That's kind of where I'm like, okay, how many more surprises do they have, Kurt? I just don't know. Maybe enough to win the series. I don't know. But
the other thing I'm loving about this series is you've got two really ruthless coaches. There's no, and we can talk about this with the Celtics later, who kind of don't always bring their focus and don't just attack their weaknesses. Both Tom Thibodeau and Eric Spoelstra will relentlessly attack your weakness until you prove them that they can't, or you remove that. Duncan Robinson, game 1, steps on the floor. Duncan Robinson was going to be involved in every pick and roll until they took him off the floor. They were just going to make him, look, you're not a good defender. Guess what we're going to do? Like, that kind of playoff mentality, we're just not always seeing from every team. And it's kind of refreshing in this series, even if it's been a little up and down from the play. Like, these are two teams and coaches that get how you play in the playoffs. It's been great. Where, not to switch series already, Boston hasn't been that.
No. Yeah, Boston is one of those teams that I find confusing. And I understand, okay, they're younger, as far as, their leadership's concerned. But I don't necessarily understand how you could be so dominant one night and then not dominant the other night, Yeah. And that kind of back and forth, to me, I don't think is a championship DNA type of team. However, the fact of the matter is this is a brilliant team. very, like, I mean, they're unbelievably talented. They have the experience. They've had the knocks and bruises. They have the scars to, through the playoff memory. They've been able to keep everyone together and get better year after year. They have the coaching. Joe Mazzulla have done a really good job stepping in and taking over, and bringing his team to the next level. However, there is that, like you said, that lack of consistent killer instinct on a night-to-night basis in the playoffs. That, to me, I'm like, you can't afford to give a team life, because if you give someone hope in this instance, I mean, we saw what happened with Milwaukee, and you could be out as a number 1 seed.
Yeah. And you knew, look, just, hey, they're going to have a big game from James Harden. They didn't double James Harden. They're still going to single cover James Harden. They're going to stick with what they do. And it's a little bit of that. The mentality, I think, sometimes gets Budenholzer in trouble, which is, we are who we are, and we're going to stick with this, and you've got to beat this. And Popovich did that too. It's just, it's easier to do that when you have Tim Duncan and David Robinson and Tony Parker and Matt. Like, they had the talent to kind of get away with it. It's just frustrating because 2 out of the last 3 games, heading into game 2 between the Celtics and 76ers, whom Embiid may or may not be back for, Game 5 and then Game 1 of the next series, but Game 5 against the Hawks, they mailed in the effort. We got this. They're going to roll over for us. Our talent's going to win us this game, and you can't do that in the playoffs. You can't do that against the Trae Young. You certainly can't do that against James Harden and Tyrese Maxey and a 76ers team that, by the way, I think Doc was right about this. Isn't this Sixer team showing a little more fight and heart than we've seen from them in the past?
Yeah, Joel Embiid won MVP, so congratulations to him. His first MVP, finished second the past 2 years. So, I mean, he was right on the cusp of breaking through. Obviously, he's been one of the league's best players, but now it's, very clear that he's the most dominant player consistently over the, hit an unbelievable season. I thought it was Jokic, but like I said, Embiid's incredible.
Yeah, no.
So the fact of the matter is that, now I think they're starting to get to a place of maturity. To me, they're a lot like UConn. In the March Madness, because March Madness was just absolutely crazy, like crazy. FAU going, it was just unbelievable, right? But UConn was dominant. They were the only dominant team in the entire, tournament, beating everybody like 15 points, and they got to the final, and everyone got, distracted by all the sideshows, all the crazy games and the upsets. But then UConn took care of business. They won. To me, that's how the 76ers are. Where, like, look. They have Joel Embiid, who's been dominant all season long. When he's out getting a little bit of rest, James Harden can go off. Despite his past poor playoff performances, he's starting to show that, he can buoy up this team at this critical moment. They have the depth. They have the coaching. They were the only dominant team in the first round, right? And then now they're kind of just taking care of business. Everyone else is worried about the Warriors and the Lakers. Everyone else is worried about the Suns, and Kevin Durant just signed a lifetime deal with Nike, and he's one of the best players in the world. There's all this other, like, the Heat are upsetting the Milwaukee Bucks. So, and I think the 76ers are just passing through, being dominant, and they have a real chance to be like UConn and just go all the way this season.
I actually, that's a great analogy. By the way, congrats to, I voted for Embiid. Good for,
it's incredible.
It's very deserving. But the thing that I noticed now when we added up the ballots, one voter, and it was not me. Yeah, I had Jokic second. One voter left Jokic off the ballot. Like, I'm really curious when the votes come out. Like, who didn't think Jokic was a top 5 player in this season? Like, you want to say he didn't win the, that it should have been Giannis, or it should have been Embiid, or it should have been whatever, but not in the top 5, really? Okay. Anyway, sidetrack there. The other team that's taking care of business, by the way, is the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah, I think Denver, and this is what I mean, is when all this is shaken out.
Yeah.
I mean, Denver looks good. And at the end of the season there was a moment when I remember Jokic was out. Michael Porter Jr. went off in this one game. It's one of those games that like a sleeper game where, you're number 1 seed, you have it all boxed up. It's like it's a present. You have to ship it out, right? And they could have easily been upset by like a bad team who had nothing to play for. So this was like a Super Bowl, and Michael Porter Jr. stepped up, had like 30-something points, was incredible. And then Jamal Murray was just like diving on the floor.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, this Nuggets team gets it, And then the way that Jokic leads, how he's like, we're following Jamal Murray right now. Yeah. And this is a guy who won back-to-back MVPs. He was this close, to being in a conversation with Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, and Larry Bird, Kurt. Like, talking about like the legends of legends. And he's like he's deferring to his partner in crime there and saying, hey, Jamal Murray's balling. And Jamal Murray is balling.
Yes.
So this is the perfect moment for Denver, and they're up 2-0. Chris Paul goes out with the groin. What do you think about the series ending up?
I like Denver before the series. I've said this on here before. I told you, after seeing the Suns in person against the Clippers a couple times, I actually knocked them down a peg.
Interesting. Why?
Because watching them against, look, what was the Clipper role players those last 3 games of that series, right? Like,
the last 3 years.
Yeah. Yes. Anytime in the last 3 years, but like no Kawhi, no Paul George. So you're just it's the Norman Powell show and Terrence Mann and all these guys. But the Clippers, to their credit, have built a pretty deep roster. Like they've got good deep role players that were theoretically going to go around the stars that didn't play, but they could keep rolling guys out. Zubats is there. That depth bothered the Suns in that series. That Phoenix won because they had the better talent, but you could see like the holes. Like, oh, do we play Torrey Craig or do we go with Okogie, or how do we balance this out? They're still clearly trying to figure out their defensive rotations weren't sharp, and I'm like, Denver looks sharp. I think that they can get them. And now I think the bigger problem is just matchups. And Chris Paul being out doesn't really change this. They don't have anybody who really can cover Jamal Murray. Chris Paul isn't at that point in his career anymore. Now he's out for a few games probably. You could put Devin Booker on him, but that is a big ask if you're going to ask him to help carry the offense. Like, now you're putting a lot on him. You're risking foul trouble. You can go with Okogie, I guess, is your best option. You just don't have a good matchup for Jamal Murray. And Denver's just executing at a high level, and their role players. I mean, Bruce Brown. How good does Bruce Brown look right now?
I know. We saw in Brooklyn, he had that moment. There was a moment where you're like, wow. Because for me, like Al Trusso in LA, you're like, hey, he could be a really good role player. Rui Hachimura, we can talk about him in a little bit, but like, he could be a really good role player. Yeah. And then like, there was this moment, Bruce Brown in Brooklyn, where you're like, this guy could be a really good role player for a team. And you're right. Yeah. He's like stepping in a big way for Denver with all like the hustle, all the things that like, fill in they don't go in the stat sheet, but they go into the plus minus category. And that's great. No, yeah, I think you're onto it, Kurt. I really do. I think my biggest issue with the Suns is, they made a play like a Premier League team. Like, we're going to do a mid-season add-on that's going to be a radical difference and make us into, a top-of-the-table team. The difference is, this is not the Premier League, one. Like the Premier League, the way it works is like there's no playoff, So like like winning those games really can affect, the mid-season transfer ad. It really does make a difference. In basketball, just because you brought someone in mid-season, you still got to play in the playoffs, and it's win or go home. And we're seeing this they're just so disconnected, Kurt. And in Phoenix, it's like, yeah, you have all this talent. What do you do with it? What's the combination?
And in the Premier League, if I'm adding a player, I'm sending out cash. Here, I had to send out Bridges and like all this depth, all this role playing depth that helped us. We don't have now, and they really. I think they're a very good team, and I think given a summer to round that roster out, Dave Jones is going to put together a very dangerous team for next year. But they're flawed right now, and Denver's. Give them credit. That is, Aaron Gordon's playing well. Just up and down the roster. Up and down the roster. They also, something that we haven't seen as much that they have. They just know who they are, right? Like, even though guys have been in and out of the lineup for years and whatever, they know who they are. They know what they want to do. They know, hey, we're switching this defense to go with. We're going to ice this instead of we're changing this up. They've all done it for years in the same system, they just know what they want to do next. And it's a huge advantage.
Yeah, in this instance, I completely agree. It's a huge advantage. And I agree, watching Phoenix against LA, the Clippers, I was thinking, this team isn't very good, as good as we thought they were. And I'm thinking this should be writing on the wall for the rest of the league. It's like, look what happened. Kyrie Irving joined the Dallas Mavs. They thought to make a run. They had Luka and Kyrie, didn't work, right? They didn't make the playoff. And then this one, it's like you add in Kevin Durant. Yes, I understand he was injured, for a large portion at the beginning there, but like you thought it was going to make you into a championship contender. No, like not at this stage. It's going to take some time. And then of course we saw what happened with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George and the Clippers. We're still waiting for that to coalesce. But one thing I do think, Kurt, is fascinating is this resurgence of the LA Lakers, because the Lakers, they look like they can handle the Warriors. The way that Anthony Davis is playing and taking a little bit of pressure off LeBron. We know LeBron has been Herculean. But if Anthony Davis plays the way he is, and Reeves and Hachimura, the rest of the team does, I mean, this could actually be very dangerous. I think they could take care of business against the Warriors and keep going on.
First off, what I love about this series is just it's a matchup of styles, right? It's like the Lakers are big and long and going to pound you inside. 50, they had 52 points in the paint and got to the line 20. They had 20 more free throws, and they're just old school. And the Warriors are going to do their thing, man. They're going to launch threes, but they couldn't get the easy buckets at the rim quite the same way. They didn't get out in transition, I think, as much as they would like in game one. And we'll see what happens in game two. But it's a fun style, just a stylistic matchup, right? It's just boxing. Styles make fights, man. These are two teams that want to play differently, and the Lakers got game one. I'm with you that they are, when they defend well enough, they're a threat. They are. I mean, this is a good long team, and if the other question is, look, man, Anthony Davis is he's just on a heater. That is such an amazing performance he had. Can he keep it up?
That's the question. That's 30 and 23. Can you keep it up? I mean, obviously, you don't necessarily need 30 and 23.
No.
I mean, but you look at
it wasn't even that. It was the blocks. It was the defense.
So for me, can he be consistent? Throughout the course of the playoffs, we know he can be, because I thought he was in conversation for NBA Finals MVP when they won last time. I thought he was unbelievable the entire playoffs. But I want to direct your attention, when you go back to the old days and you look at like the stats, look at Tim Duncan's performances, in some of these series, or like. It's just crazy. We're talking like quadruple doubles, like nearly averaging quadruple doubles, for like entire series, and that's, I'm not saying that Anthony Davis needs to do that, because, LeBron is still playing at a 30 and 20 pace too, So like you don't need that kind of level of Anthony Davis every night. But even if you get just a little bit of that, a 30 and 10 or 28 and 10 from Anthony Davis, this Lakers team could easily handle business against the Warriors. And that's shocking, because, like up to 2 months ago or a month ago, this Lakers team was not, in my mind, not nearly there.
No, on top of my list, the three things to watch in this series, number one was that I'd written was Anthony Davis needs to be the best player on the floor, which is a big ask when Stephen Curry is on the floor. But if the Lakers were going to have a chance, he had to. The ESPN Stats and Info had something. Lakers shot 4 of 17 when he was the primary defender last night. Like in game one, like if he's defending like that, they have it. If they're taking away the paint because they can pack it in, then they have a chance. They have a real chance. I think that's ultimately the big key. They have a shot now. Now they won one on the road. They've got a real chance to advance. And LeBron basically said he came back from he's not quite as explosive. The foot thing clearly still bothers him a little, and he's playing through it. But he basically said, I don't know if I'd come back if I didn't think this team had a chance. But he believed they had a chance. And once again, Corey, I think LeBron was right. So.
Yeah, he saw something that I certainly did not see.
Yeah.
But obviously he's in the locker room. He's around it every day. Maybe he saw a change in demeanor or countenance. I have no idea. But from watching the games, I was like, I don't see what you're seeing, LeBron.
Yeah.
But he was right, and I was wrong. So I'm happy to say that out loud. Yeah. And I do think the second most concerning thing, like I said, I don't need a quadruple double, average by Anthony Davis. Yeah. I just need like 28 and 10. And like the defense that you're saying. And I think the Lakers just handle this series and send Golden State home. The second most important thing to me is LeBron. This is down the road. Can he keep doing this? Like, the amount of minutes, the load that he's putting on his body and has, since he, cut that recovery short to do this. I mean, I know he takes good care of his body, but do you really think he has, 2 or 3 more rounds, of this kind of level of play left in his body? I mean, that foot thing was, remember, he was out for a while.
Yeah. And this is now this series and then the next one. Well, it depends on when it starts, but this series and the next one, they're basically every other day. Like there's not breaks now until the finals, which have the weird television influence schedule. It's every other day, and it's a big ask. That's my question for the Lakers this series and beyond, whether they face Denver next or whatever, is can they keep up this pace? Because Anthony Davis was understandably gassed after that one. But speaking of Anthony Davis,
before we get there, Kurt.
Okay.
I have to ask you about Jordan Poole in the last shot. People want to know about it. People want to know what you think. So what do you think about that last possession there? Warriors down 3, and Steph Curry gives up the ball.
First off, the Lakers did the right thing. Don't let Steph Curry beat you. There's certain guys, Warriors did this to Fox late in one game. Like, I don't care if anybody else beats you. We're doubling Fox. Don't let Fox beat us. You can't let Steph Curry take that shot. When he passed it to Poole and Poole just launched it, my out loud reaction at home with my wife turned to me, looked at me like, no, don't take, because I just thought he was so deep and he could have dribbled up into that and taken a slightly better shot in rhythm. But he's made that. He had a nice game. He had more of a bounce back game after kind of a rough first series. But I don't know that was the best shot in that moment. But he's also your options were limited. You weren't going to pass out of it. So yeah. It's not a horrible shot, but I think there was a better one out there if he'd taken a beat and dribbled into it and taken a step up to the line, even if it's slightly more contested, he would have had just a second. It was just the old John Wooden thing, be quick, don't hurry. And I think he hurried.
Mm-hmm. So now I want to take you to my jukebox. Let's listen to some music, shall we? I want to bring you, we're going to stay in LA. And I want to take you to Anthony Davis. So this is I Can't Get No Satisfaction by the Rolling Stones. To me, the reason why I picked this song is, do you like the Stones, Kurt? First, let's let the Stones.
I appreciate the Stones' place in music history. They've never been a band that grabbed me.
Mm-hmm. So I agree. But the thing that's important here about the Stones is, with this song particularly, there's this element of nothing is good enough, right? And I feel like that's how I feel about Anthony Davis. And I felt like this about him, his entire basketball career that I've witnessed. In college, I was like, this guy is unbelievable. His skill set was just super rare. And I guess I just expected massive things. In New Orleans, same thing. I was like, this guy he was doing amazing things, but it still was not good enough. Yeah. And then in the LA, he's they won a championship, still it feels like I'm disappointed with Anthony Davis, because every year it always is the same thing. This is Anthony Davis's team, and the Lakers will be successful if he's successful. And he puts up crazy numbers, but it's always not enough. And I don't know what it is about not being able to get satisfaction with Anthony Davis and his play. To me, it's always great, 30 and 23. Can you do it again?
Exactly. We just did it. Yeah.
It's amazing to me because I'm like, you're incredible as a player, and yet I don't know why I can't stop this feeling of you should be giving me more. Do you feel that way about him? I don't know why.
I've always felt he's never felt like the consistent number one option on a team, even when he was it just didn't lift as far as he wanted. And I don't really blame him for New Orleans, because there wasn't enough around him to win. At the end of the day, it's great if you're that good. If there's no talent around you or not enough, you can only go so far. But there does seem to be this, you just expect more. He hasn't ever felt, I guess, to use LeBron, his teammate, as the example, LeBron has been the best player on a best team that's done all these things, and you genuinely believe that LeBron can raise the level of everyone around him and raise a team up. And I'm not like Anthony Davis literally did it in game 1, and all we can think is, yeah, can he do that again? I'm just not sure sold that he can be consistent.
Yeah, it's the weirdest thing, it's the weirdest thing. So I was like, I had to throw that in there. I just it's just a very strange phenomenon. I don't know what it is. So let's move on here. We have some. We love bringing you around the world, right? The game is very international. Look at the past 5 years, the MVP. Who's won them? International players.
Yes.
Dallas and Minnesota playing 2 preseason games in Abu Dhabi. Tell me about this. What do you think about this? Like this entire experiment.
It's the NBA chasing the money. Let's just be honest. Like there's not some huge. I don't want to say there aren't NBA fans in the Middle East, because there absolutely are, but this isn't like when the NBA is trying to expand into India or China. I think it's really obvious, right? Like what the goal is there. Those are massive population bases. We want to expand our sport, amongst this group. This seems to just be them chasing the money. Team USA is actually going to, on their way out to the Philippines for the World Cup, is actually going to stop there. And I don't know if they're playing a game and doing a scrimmage, or if it's just practices. They're going to be there. It bothers me a little bit because it's a business. I guess this is what they do. And they are bringing a huge marketable star in Nikola Jokic. I'm not Nikola Jokic, sorry. Luka Doncic, big, huge international star, Real Madrid star.
But why Minnesota?
I mean, how do you feel about this?
Yeah, but why Minnesota? You think, is it Anthony Edwards? I guess it's just interesting. Why Minnesota?
It's a good question. It's usually they'll always ask teams with stars. Sometimes owners will ask. I know, like, part of the reason Dallas does this is they're trying to expand their international fan base. I think everybody smart saw the Rockets are still the most popular team in China because of Yao Ming, right? Like, so if you can get your foothold in that fan base, and there's not a Middle Eastern, NBA player of that anywhere near the Hall of Fame caliber of Yao Ming, you've met Yao, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, a amazing person, but when you're around NBA players all the time, you get desensitized to height. You're like, oh, he's 6'9", whatever. Like you don't get fazed by it. Then you meet Yao Ming and you're like, holy cow, that's a tall human being. Like even among tall human beings, you kind of take a step back with him.
Yeah, but it's interesting. You're right. It's like if you're going to go to the middle of the Gulf, if you're going to go to the Gulf, who do you bring? And it's an interesting moment. I think they're building on what is already happening in like Saudi Arabia and the rest of the Gulf, where it's like, Messi and Ronaldo, like trying to do those overtures to get the European stars. So clearly there's an appetite for the European star that can translate very well. So I understand Luka, but it's not. Maybe it's Rudy Gobert. Maybe I don't know. I have no idea. What is the translation from Minnesota standpoint? Because I get Luka, but I don't understand Minnesota.
Yeah, maybe it's Rudy. I mean, he was a big French star. I think Anthony Edwards is on his way to breaking out to be that kind of star. He's got the big personality. He's Kermit. He's been in a TV show, or I'm sorry, movie. By the way, if you haven't seen Hustle, the Adam Sandler thing, it's pretty good. Adam Sandler, right? Adam Sandler thing, right? I'm like, I almost said Andy Samberg. I'm like, no, different guy.
But do you think about, like, as far as promoting the game? And I know the Bucks go to Paris. Like you think about some of these guys who are like kind of, okay, let's send them around the world, because in the retired world, you have people like Ruth Riley Hunter and like Dikembe Mutombo going around the world and promoting the game of basketball. Who would you send if you were the NBA? We're like, okay, we're building a new business. Let's send this representative.
Well, that's a good one. Grant Hill does really well at that stuff.
Well, I'm saying current players.
Oh,
if you're gonna like do a game and like a critical new line of business, you're like, we got to get these guys out there.
Yeah, I mean, Giannis is there, Embiid's there, but I think in a lot of ways, Doncic might be the most marketable in some. Just again, won a EuroLeague at 18. Like he has won at the highest European levels, and on top of thriving in the NBA, and has the other part of it is just he has an entertaining game. It's fun to watch Doncic play, isn't it? Jokic, and he's got, I don't know, Jokic can do it, but he's a little more of a reticent personality. Doncic embraces that a little. He's not way out there. He's not Dillon Brooks, but he does embrace a little more than I think Jokic would be happy to play basketball and go back to his horses and live in Serbia quietly in the offseason if he could.
Well, let's do it. Why don't we just go look into this Memphis team? They informed Dillon Brooks that he's not going to be returning, so he's an unrestricted free agent. And this is in the wake of some, explosive comments that the media and an entire piece. I don't know if you saw that, a very in-depth piece talking about how Dillon Brooks relishes this role of being, this trash talker, get under your skin. I don't have any friends in the league. And then he later said, you guys made me into a villain here in the NBA. And now he's not on his team anymore. And he was the longest tenured player on this team, which, by the way, shocking, 6 years. 6-year veteran on the Memphis Grizzlies now is gone. So what do you think about the impact, and what do you think about their decision to move on?
I think it is the right decision, although I thought it was weird, the phrasing, the under no circumstances would he be back, because there's always circumstances. There's always this, and I wouldn't be shocked just because of who's out there and the finances. Like, he might ultimately have to be part of a sign and trade to get where he wants to go, or to a team that wants him. And if you send Memphis shooters or veterans, they might be very open to it. I think that this was a case where, Corey, this happens to a lot of guys. Like, it's fine if you're the instigator. You can be Pat Beverly or pick your instigator of choice, as long as you're positively impacting play. Pat Beverly has sparked the defense on a couple of teams, including Minnesota last year, where he was. The Lakers dared him to shoot. They wanted Dillon Brooks to shoot. He was an offensive problem who was, frankly, he got heavy minutes in Game 6, largely because Luke Kennard was about to take a bunch of his minutes. The shooting, if you're not helping on the court, if the shooting is such a black hole issue that the Lakers are helping off you and causing problems for everybody else, then it's not worth it. And it's not worth the large contract he's going to get, because he brings, Corey, the thing is, he still brings a valuable skill to the table, right? Like, on-ball defending still matters.
Yeah, I think they made a mistake here. Really? But I understand, given the circumstances. Because remember, John Morant got in trouble, got suspended. So you're thinking, okay, well, gun violence, huge stances that the entire league, everyone in the league, coaches, players, the Players Association take on gun violence. You gotta make that stand against, John Morant. Then they kind of fall apart. They unravel in the postseason. Dillon Brooks does that huge in-depth article, kind of brings attention on himself. This is not his team. He's like the third or fourth option on this team, right? Yeah. So that you're just kind of inviting distractions. I don't think the Grizzlies handled this well, because I think they're trying to scrub up the image franchise, the look. Because we talked about this before. I told you, when I look at the Grizzlies and I watch them play, they're a punk band. Everything about them is like punk rock, right? And I think they're trying to scrub that up and say, maybe we don't want to be punk rock. Maybe John Morant needs to be out of, these situations. Maybe we don't want to have Dillon Brooks, poking the bear. Maybe we don't want to be that team anymore. So we're going to move on from Dillon Brooks. But I mean, I thought they should have supported him more and gave him another chance, because he did great for that team. He played, although in the playoffs, no, I get that. But, to treat your longest tenured player that way, and he's done filled a really good role for you. I don't necessarily think they handled that the right way, but I understand that they had to if that's their intention to scrub up the franchise, you got to let them go.
I get the basketball move, and I think it was, again, just what he's going to cost isn't worth this, and they need shooting. I think they just need the veteran presence. I mean, watch DeAnthony Melton with the Sixers right now and think, man, they let him go. Isn't that exactly the guy they need right now, who can shoot some threes and play some defense? And how did you, it was financial and all that, but those are the kind of guys they need. But I think you're right on this. The Grizzlies don't get off the hook here. They fostered this environment. They liked the idea of being punk rock as an organization, as a culture, they didn't try to nip this in the bud and say, no, I don't think we're going the right way. No, They wanted this attitude.
Remember the Warriors, like Grizzlies last year, like, you know, they were like smoking the flame, and it's like unapologetically punk rock. Like, you know, like, no, that's like, that was their whole image. And then it got them in trouble. And then now I think they're walking it back. And I understand the financial considerations of Dillon Brooks. I get that. But, you know, but I think they made a mistake here. And like I said, I think moving forward, you know, if you think, okay, well, what does this team look like? You know, you got a defensive player of the year in Jaren Jackson Jr. You know, you got John Morant. So, like, I think you're right. Like, yeah, what do we need as an organization? You know, let's just try to figure out around the edges. But if you're talking about adding veteran leadership to get rid of your longest tenured player who understood his role and did that job for you at a high level, I don't think that's a good move. And then the other thing about this is that you think about the other guys who are instigators around the league. They don't stay in one spot very long. It's not like PJ Tucker had a long career in Milwaukee, you know, like Milwaukee or whatever. It's like you do something and then you do it for us for 1 year. You get under people's skin and then you leave, right? Patrick Beverley is never in one spot for very long. So, you know, if you're going to be that guy and become, you know, the on-ball defender that doesn't have any friends, and if that's what you want, the image you want to cultivate, you're going to be a road warrior. You're going to be a journeyman. That's the life that you chose.
So you're saying the Grizzlies want to be a little less Black Flag and a little more Green Day, a little more pop punk, acceptable to the masses.
Yeah, it's like an approachable punk rock. You know? Yeah, it's like, because
real all the rough edges off. It's a little poppy.
Yeah, I mean, real punk rock is like, you know, you were into that music and I studied it. Like, punk rock is like, it's like super edgy. Like, people think it's kind of cool or whatever, and then you like get into the culture, like, yo, like there are like consequences to living a punk rock lifestyle. Yeah. You know, so I think that is like, it's not like you can just, you know, dip your foot into that punk rock lifestyle. You have to commit, and if you're going to commit, like, you're going to have issues like suspensions and leading the NBA in technical fouls. Like, that's going to be your life. Like, that's the life you signed up for. That's punk rock.
The punk rock songs are 2 minutes long for a reason, man. Like, they're just, it's hard to go longer than that.
So let's move on to the FIBA World Cup, because this is very exciting. You know, we've talked about USA on the international stage. They're in Group C, and their group members that they're competing against: Greece, New Zealand, Jordan. So you look at the draw. It looks like they might not even face the big hitters, defending champion Spain or, you know, France, until much later on. What do you think about the draw?
Yeah, it's a good draw for the United States. There's only one. Jordan's not going to be very good. They should be able to handle New Zealand, who's got some talent, but Steven Adams' game doesn't really translate to international basketball. And you get one really fun first round showdown, right? USA versus Giannis Antetokounmpo in Greece. Well, it won't just be Giannis. It'll be like the whole Antetokounmpo family in Greece. Like, they're all on that team. So it makes it, I think it's about as good as the U.S. could hope for, because of what you said. The longer you can avoid France and, you know, I'm not sure where Croatia and Serbia and some of the other dangerous teams land, but the longer you can avoid dangerous teams in the knockout, the better. And the U.S. is on a pretty good spot there. So I think it's going to be a fun tournament, but I think the U.S. got a really good draw out of this. They did not land in one of those groups of death that are out there.
Yeah. And I think it's good because, you know, you have some, like, I don't want to say this, but like, so I won't, but I think you have some games that are challenging. So you can, you know, because like the way that the way that the international circuit works, right? Like, you might only have like 2 weeks, like the way that USA does it, you know, you only have like 2 weeks to play with these guys, get to know everybody. And then you're off and you have a training camp in Vegas and you're gone, right? Maybe some friendlies, and then you have to go. Especially now, since the team that qualified for this is not, you know, they're not, no one. It's a different team, you know. So I think in that sense, this is a nice group, because you're going to have a big showdown against Greece, right? You're going to have, you know, a game against Jordan and New Zealand. So you're going to be able to kind of like get your sea legs, if you will.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see who signs up. I know Trae Young said he wanted to play. The teams that make deeper runs now, sometimes those guys kind of pull back, and guys who are certainly injured. So it'll be interesting to see what the roster ends up looking like. It's not like the Olympics where guys are kind of falling all over themselves because of the branding opportunities of winning the gold. It's the World Cup gets, I don't want to say a second tier, but not everybody, you know, look, LeBron's not playing this summer, you know, like Curry's not playing this summer. And it's that second, you know, Durant's not going to be there. It'll be interesting to see who they get, but it's still, man, our second tier stars are enough to win this thing.
So now for the fun segment is we always end with some sort of like, I think our producer Dan calls them Mad Libs.
Yes.
So, there are kind of these out of left field questions that, make you ponder. So here's this question. What is a unique skill or hobby that you would like to pick up right now or wish you had growing up?
I struggled with this one. I've tried, honestly, as I've gotten older, I got more into cooking, which is something I did in my youth, largely because both my parents worked. So I like to eat. If I was going to eat, I was going to have to make some of my own food, but it was unimpressive. I've gotten more into it as I've gotten older, like to watch cooking shows, not the competition, not the competition shows as much. Like I don't watch a lot of Food Network, but I like eating different things. I'm like, oh, hey, that's what they eat in Peru. How do I make Peruvian ceviche?
Wow.
Try to do it now. I've never actually made Peruvian ceviche, but that's the kind of thing I find more interesting. And honestly, that's not during the playoffs, but it's often my Zen half hour. If I'm cooking dinner, it's, man, I'm going to put on some Thelonious Monk. I'm going to chop some onions and garlic, and I'm just going to kind of be in the place for 45 minutes and chill out after a day and before I put games back on. And it's just kind of my space. So what about you? What did you wish you picked up, or what have you picked up?
No wishing, because I have a lot of life to live, Kurt. I'm looking forward. I'm forward looking. So what am I going to pick up today or tomorrow or in the coming weeks? It's a good question. I think I would like to pick up, if we're going to go food, I like that. I think I would like to learn how to bake maybe.
Yeah, it's like a whole different thing.
I think that'd be cool. Yeah, because it's like making fresh bread. One, it'd make your apartment smell amazing, and then two, who doesn't love fresh bread? You'd be like everyone's friend. You could bring in fresh bread as a gift. I come bearing fresh bread. And I love bread. I literally can eat bread all the time.
Yes.
So it would be the greatest thing I could do in the morning. Just wake up and eat bread, and then for lunch with soup. For dinner with I would love that. I would love bread in my life. Fresh bread.
My wife has done that. We should cut back on carbs, and I'm like, yeah, we should. But have you tasted carbs? They're so good.
Well, I'm excited to hear what your thoughts are next week, because I'm sure the way this is playing out, it's circus. Yes. I have no idea what's going to happen. So please head to NBCSports.com/NBA for all this latest NBA news, because you're gonna need it. Minute by minute updates from Kurt and his team. Kurt, I will talk to you next week.
I look forward to it.